wonderful person to interview. He's a brain scientist, but I'll let Mary introduce him in a couple of minutes. First of all, I want to tell you, everyone, that my mission at Success in Aging is to bring hope, and that is helping older people engage. And to that end, I have developed the Success in Aging box, the first of its kind of products that seniors and their families would want to know about. So to access one of these for yourselves or your loved ones, you can go to successinaging.com. Again, successinaging.com. And if you want to read or hear any of on videos, anything else I do, please go to diepatterson.com. Okay, Mary, come on. I can hardly wait to interview Paul Nussbaum. Let's hear it.
Awesome. Well, I am so excited to have you on the show, Paul. The brain is obviously this mystery, right? It's this big conglomeration of an organ up there, and I'm so excited you're going to demystify that for us today. So I'm honored to be able to introduce you, and then I'm going to let the two of you talk. But before I get going, if you're coming on live, we would love for you to say hi, and please comment in the comment field, because we're here live to answer your questions. So if any of the wisdom bombs that Paul drops today touch you in any way, like impact you, that you think would help others, please write it in the comments and say hashtag wisdom, and then put what you've learned, because if you do, you're actually going to be qualified to win one of Di's new prayer teacups. So again, as Paul says his words of wisdom, maybe even Di might say something wise. I don't know. No promise here. Remember to put hashtag wisdom, put those words of wisdom after that, so we can enter you to win, and we really appreciate that. And if this is something that you think one of your friends or a community that you belong to would love this information, feel free to sprinkle it among them or share it into your group. So we really appreciate that. And Karen's already here. She can't wait. So without further ado, let me introduce Dr. Paul Nussbaum. Dr. Nussbaum is a board-certified clinical psychology and geropsychology with a specialization in neuropsychology. Wow, I can't even pronounce those. It's so impressive. Goodness sakes. He has done so many things, but he is also currently an adjunct professor in the neurological surgery at the University of Pittsburgh School of Medicine. Wow. He is also the founder and president of Brain Health Center, Inc., that provides independent medical examinations, record reviews, and case management for those suffering neurological and neurobehavioral disorders. The center, what a blessing that is. The center also serves as the epicenter for Dr. Nussbaum's brain health lifestyle, which is registered, consultation business, and his keynote presentations internationally. He has 30 years of experience in the care of adults and older persons suffering from dementia, head injury, and many neuropsychiatric psychiatric disorders. I apologize. Dr. Nussbaum educates the general public on the basics of human brain and how to keep the brain healthy over our entire lifespan. Thank you very much. He serves as the face of brain health to many companies and organizations as he bridges neuroscience to the general public. And again, thank you, Paul. We cannot wait to get to it. I'm going to drop off the screen, but you two have so much to talk about. Thanks you again for being on the show.
Thanks, Mary.
Yes. And Ruth, we see you. Come on. Thanks for being here too. Paul, it's a delight to have you here today. You're in Florida. Thank you so much. I'm in SoCal, so we both got some sunshine going. Thank you so much, Ruth, for coming on. I will tell you that it's been a delight to know Paul over the last, I would say, 15 years, to watch his work as it's come out online and in his books. I would like every one of you to go to his website, and that's Brain Health Center, CTR.com, brainhealthcenter.com, and really read. You are in for some wonderful information, very important for us, our families, our grandkids, and also to really find out what is brain health. So I'm going to jump right into that question. Paul, what is brain health? And what are some important things for all of us to know about our brains?
Well, first, thanks so much for staying in contact with me over the years. We're buddies, and it's a pleasure to be on your show, and congratulations to all your good works. So brain health really is this relatively new concept, because for some reason, the great paradox in Western civilization has been that we haven't paid attention to the human brain. Oh. And it's the single greatest, most magnificent miracle ever designed, and it sits right between our ears. And relatively recently, by that I mean probably in the last 20, 25 years, we've had these magical windows into the brain, these cameras that tell us about what the brain's doing, what it looks like. And we've learned that we can shape our brain. And so we can shape our brain for health. So we learn from research the practical things we can do to help build a healthier brain across a lifespan. That's kind of what brain health is all about.
Yes. And you know, I was a little kid when Star Trek came out, and they claimed they were the final frontier, but truly the brain is the final frontier. And yeah, I think that several of us on this link have been touched in our grandchildren's lives with autism. Several of us have been touched with different brain events that have happened that we didn't know were really going to affect healthy people. So in your estimation, oh, thank you, Wisdom, we haven't been paying enough attention to our magnificent brains. Right. Paul, what are the top 3 things that you feel that everyday people can do to pay attention to their magnificent brains?
Well, the first thing is to be insightful about it, right? I mean, literally just to be, to want to learn a little bit more about this part of you. It's not an academic or clinical thing. It's you. We spend a whole lot of time learning about our hearts, and that's wonderful, but the brain really is the epicenter. The second thing is understand that it wants to be stimulated. Now, your brain, we've talked already, Di, about, aging successfully into the latter lifespan and all the challenges that occur, but your brain doesn't know how old it is, nor does it care. It just wants to be stimulated.
Yes.
And there's some really practical things Grandma taught all of us that can help us with that I'm sure you and I are going to talk about. The third major thing would be to have a spiritual health to you, however you define that. A belief in a higher being, a belief in God, engaging with nature. You're in California. I'm looking out at the water right now. Those are spiritual moments for me. And so because what that does for us, it takes us away from the earthbound anxieties that we all suffer.
Yes. Earthbound anxieties. That is a major player. You and I spoke off camera about stress. Yeah. Can you speak a little bit to how you have found in your studies that stress affects humans?
Well, I'll tell you, Diane. I said this the other day during a keynote, and I keep this to myself, except for when I speak and I get asked the question, which is I've read a whole lot, daily. A lot of the research, a lot of what's happening to the human brain. I've always been interested in human behavior, and I've had a chance to be around a lot of smarter people than me. So I've learned from them. And the thing I keep coming back to is one of the most significant factors with regard to our ability to say that I'm healthy or not is actually how well I manage my perceived stress. Now, at a structural level, stress, that which we perceive as taking some control from us, has both a functional impact on our lives in the brain. We're talking about the brain right now. It can literally impact my ability to remember. I have so many individuals who come to me who may think they have Alzheimer's. They don't. They're juggling too many balls at once. They tend to be very successful people, but they've lost balance. And what happens is there's a structure called the amygdala. I'll hold up my left hand here just to help with this. And right next to the amygdala is a structure called the hippocampus. The only thing you need to know out there, folks, is that the hippocampus is probably the most important part of your body, but it's the thing that helps you learn new information. When we're under stress, it tends to suffocate your hippocampus, so you don't remember. That's why you didn't remember during the math test growing up. That's why you forget certain things before you go on stage. And it's why in our 50s when we're doing too much, in our 60s when we're doing too much, in our 70s when we're not balanced, in our 80s when we're not balanced, we don't remember. It's true, you're not remembering. But if you gain balance, the stress leaves, your hippocampus thrives, and you begin to remember very normally again.
Awesome. I am a firm believer that positive stress and negative stress, since they're brother and sister, can both overtake us if we are not watchful. And I think that you brought up some wonderful points about watchfulness, to have a spiritual life, to have something that you can run to during the day to rest. We need to rest periodically during our days. And thank you, Karen Rashid. Yes, wisdom is to believe in God. I have developed during the pandemic this thing called the prayer teacup. And I tended to speak to a lot of customer service people during the pandemic, and they were frightened, as many people were, and they were having a lot of things going on with them. So I came to the realization that if I asked younger people how their mothers were and how their fathers were dealing with the pandemic, that I would get an immediate response. Sometimes it would be crying. Sometimes it would be, oh, thank you for asking me. And so what I did was I told them every morning when I read my Bible and do my devotion, I had an empty teacup next to me, and into it that I would throw their prayer request for their parent, their family. I said, you don't even have to tell me what it is.
Right.
I just know that you need some relief. So I'm going to toss you right now. And I go, boosh, kind of over the phone so they'd hear that.
Yeah.
And I'd say, okay, every morning I hold it up and I pray, and I just pray for everybody in the teacup. So that is why people are putting #wisdom and saying something, because they're actually in a contest right now to get a prayer teacup in the mail. But that is something that I realized, that many people don't take meditation breaks, care breaks. I had a professor in college who wrote a whole book on pause. And he said, you should take a sticky note and write pause and stick it either on your computer, or I put it on the end of my tape. And it just says pause. And he said, every half hour, pause for 30 seconds and you'll be physically healthier.
Right.
And he did a lot of brain research in this book telling about that. I also am really impressed with the work that you have done and have created a center for people to come and have a specialist, a doctor who just specializes in understanding the brain, to assess them. And I believe also that comfort is a huge thing when we talk truth. So Mary, if you will put up another one of his questions. I was just talking too much there because I'm all jazzed about what he's saying. So Paul, can the human brain really continue to develop across a very long lifespan?
No, absolutely. Yeah, my mother just turned 98, and she continues to learn. She continues to be creative, to provide wisdom to her younger son, and
Yes.
and to be social. I mean, the brain's a wonderful system that just wants to be relational and spiritual and stimulated with mental activity, and be physically active, and to be nutritional, right? So and that doesn't stop. That's just a human condition. Like when you turn 78, you don't stop being human. So all the things that we're challenged by remain in front of us, and all the things that we learn how to cope adaptively remain with us across the lifespan. We pick up a few others, right? Because that's what wisdom's about. So absolutely, your brain continues to develop structurally and to develop functionally.
Okay. So tell us about, and this is not on the questions that we had talked about, but tell us what the difference between white matter and gray matter is, because some people develop problems with that as they age.
Yeah, it's a great question. So first of all, I wish I could be fancier, but the reason we say gray and white matter is because that's how it looks on a scan. So
okay, good.
Your top, and I'll use my hands again, your top part of the thing we all think of the brain, that convoluted sort of rumpled looking thing that sits up top, that's our very conscious, complex information processing system. It's kind of what you and I are using right now, and everybody's using as we're consciously processing information. But under it, we have an older area that really serves to help us with procedures and rote tasks and emotions. And that's an older part of our brain, sometimes called the limbic system. Okay. The ways that those two areas are connected is with a vast array of bridges, neural networks, if you will, that appear to be white. And the reason they're white is because they're made up of lipid substance. It's kind of like this white shirt on my arm. If I remove the shirt and you see my bare arm, the metaphor there is that I would slow down my information processing because I don't have the lipid substance to move that electrical current of information quickly. We see it with MS, a bit with Parkinson's disease. Okay. So it turns out, by the way, women have more white matter than men. The more bridges you have, think about this, the more bridges you have, the the more areas you can travel in your world, correct? If we didn't have bridges, we couldn't get around. So a lot of bridges, a lot of white matter in your brain permits you the opportunity to really to navigate into different areas of your brain, learn new information, stimulate different areas of your brain. I go so far as to say that a female brain, I might get in trouble for this one, but a female brain I think is a bit more adaptive than the male brain, uses both sides more than the male. Females live longer than men. They manage stress better than men. And that's not coincidental, I don't think. I think it has some real anatomical reasons for that.
I do too. I think that so the point you're making is white matter is very good.
Very important.
White,
yeah.
Right. And gray matter is kind of old and rusty, or what do you
No,
consider
that's the conscious information processing part of our brain. That's where a lot of creativity, novelty, problem solving, mathematics, spatial learning, all that stuff, memory occurs up there. But it's not going to do a whole lot if we don't have a lot of motivation, a lot of emotional sparring of it, a lot of connecting up spatial with facial recognition, with new learning, with linguistics. That stuff happens with the white matter.
Yes. Well, you're known and you're speaking of how fun you are, and you make what seems to be more difficult to understand more fun. And so yes, and quite frankly, I think that fun is what stimulates our brains. If we don't have anything to look forward to, if we don't have any, joy coming in, our brains are not going to be working at their best. So you've given us your 3 top things. How can my listeners, and I've got a pretty good group, not only live, but they come and watch it, I like to say, in their socks. Yep. So give us some of your favorite things. Some people there are 20 personalities, so I understand. And some reading a book, they totally get jazzed of a hardbound book. They don't want a Kindle. They don't want, you know what I mean? But have you got some go-tos that you would advise people to do?
Yeah, so here's some quick ones. Look, every time your heart beats, 25% of the blood goes right to the brain, even though the brain only weighs 3 pounds. Therefore, we have to move. We're way too sedentary. So you can move any way you want. You can dance, you can walk, you can ride a bike, you can swim, just move. We know that the brain is composed of 60% fat, 60%. The fat is part of our being. So trying to consume foods in high omega-3 fatty acids like fish, like unsalted nuts, like seeds, the Mediterranean diet is very powerful for the brain. We know we have to remain social beings. Now, this becomes a bit of a challenge sometimes, particularly for the older adult, though we see it as challenging for younger folks too, teenagers, because a lonely brain is going to increase the risk for dementia because you're not going to be stimulating the brain. So we want to always try to engage in new networks of friends, meeting new people. Travel's been shown to be very good for the brain. Novelty and complexity. If you want to learn, if you want to think of something, what can I do that's challenging to my brain? Do something that's new and complicated for you, because your brain will take that on. Won't like it at first, but then it'll accept it, and you'll develop new neural networks to do it. And then finally, you and I have had a conversation about, the power of breathing, living in what I call the exhalation streams of life. In America, we inhale too much. We have to exhale. Meditation, you've already raised. You've already talked about sleep, the importance of that. We talked about prayer, but just having your brain, giving it some time and space to understand what it is that's stressing me, identify what's stressing you, and then understand that A, you may not have to have the battle to try to control everything, and B, sometimes anxiety has a purpose. Try to understand its purpose, but then ultimately let it go. And sometimes I teach people to let it go visually with that exhale. Literally see your breath as almost a train leaving. Put in those buckets on the train, all those things that are causing you a little bit of financial stuff, relational stuff, business stuff, my boss stuff, whatever stuff it is that we have in life that causes us some of that grief. Let it go. Let it go out there. Go away from you.
Yes.
So those are some practical tips.
I love your practical tips. First of all, I started to say, Mary's put up our mother's favorite. Mother had 6 kids and a whole lot of grandkids, and that was her mantra, man. But back to what you were saying, and this is really important. We tend, thanks, Rick, for coming on. Oh, yeah. So Rick's a writer, and I'm going to connect the two of you because he just wrote a book that every intelligent person needs to read on end of life things. So it's awesome. Now, going back to your list, I have noticed when people jump, I'll just say for myself, if I watch one YouTube video that I really am engaged with and I really like, if I jump to the next one too soon, I lose the benefits of the first one. Yeah. Because like you just said, I have not meditated enough to let my brain really absorb those points and make changes. If I'm watching something for a lifestyle change, it's not going to change unless I give it a chance to sink in.
Right. The other thing about that, and I've learned this because a lot of my work deals with lifestyle. Two things have to happen for lifestyle to matter. Number one, you have to educate someone why we're going over this. Now, the medical field, we're not that great at that. We kind of tell you what to do. We don't spend the time. Number two, it has to be personal. If it's not personal, you will not change your behavior. That's why we can pay you. We will pay you in the corporate America out there. I'll pay you money to change your behavior. And we only get like 30% compliance. Well, they're missing the whole thing, which is you're not personalizing for the person. Let me give you a quick example, okay? Everybody on the talk today, on the show today, all your audience sits in front of a computer and engages on the web, right? So they're doing something, searching on the web. Okay, so we do it, and we can also do it sort of very quickly. We can tell everybody else in the household to get the food ready, clean up this, and you're still doing your thing on the web. It's amazing. But if you look at your online banking statement, I guarantee you're engaged in a different way. I guarantee your brain is fixed. You've got attention now. It's important. Right. Why? Money. Why? Personal. Now, now you're engaged. So what you do, Di, and what I try to do is get people to that moment of engagement. Because if we can get people to that moment of engagement, it ain't money, but it's you. And health always trumps wealth. Health trumps wealth. Okay.
Yes.
So
it does.
We got to get folks engaged. And you've used that word a couple of times today, I've noticed, and you're right. And you do that by making it personal. Now, I know we got some folks here, for example, who are caring for loved ones with dementia. So they're caregivers. A third of the caregivers out there suffer major depression, have anxiety, or not sleeping. This is a real thing. Yep. You asked me before about folks with disability. I grew up in a household where an older brother had what used to be called mental retardation. Now we call it pervasive developmental disorder. Long before I knew anything about anything, I knew if I didn't answer the question right, we weren't going to sleep in the household that night. Okay, so you want to talk about a motivation, and that's where I learned about behavior. And one of the things I want everybody to hear carefully here tonight is that even if the brain has a quote unquote condition, a disorder, a disease, a malady, disability, these are words we use. That brain has the ability to show brilliance. Brilliance. We just have to learn how to approach and permit that brain to express itself. I see it personally in my own family member. And I've seen it with thousands of people. You know what, Di? Some of the healthiest people I've met in my life have stage 3, 4 this. Some of the most miserable people I've met in my life have everything you would think they could have. All their blood numbers look great. And so health is not defined by the presence or absence of disease. That's an important message for everybody.
I thank you so much for bringing that up, because cheerleading is a form of getting people to engage, and cheerleading with the amazing wealth of truth that you have to tell people is wonderful, Paul. And I think that this idea that we need to tell each other that with just a little bit more of your engagement, with just a little bit more of carving out for yourself, this is self-care. This is personal health. Right. This is, and brain health, we've only got one. Right. And it is, like you said, so amazingly unknown. Right. In its strengths. But the truth is, it's going to engage until the moment we pass, until the moment we pass. And because I'm a gerontologist and I love aging people, to get them to understand that they have this wealth in their brain. Like you said, you know, health trumps wealth, but this is a wealth up here. And we have to be kind enough to each other to tell each other the truth.
Right.
Take a mental health break. I used to say mental health Mondays, you know, when we were going through the pandemic, I'd call friends and say, are you okay? Because it's Monday.
Right. No, and you're right. I mean, COVID really was a time when I did a lot of webinars for folks. Basically, didn't matter who I was talking to, the message everybody was very happy to hear was, what I'm going through is normal. I'm not the only one.
Thank you.
These are some of the smartest, some of the wealthiest, some of the most well-educated. It didn't matter. It continues to be a very difficult, it took control away from us. It took our socialization away from us. It took our ability to engage in our physical activity, get to the church, to the gym. We ate differently. We didn't eat as well. We didn't sleep as well. It's a very difficult time for the brain. And so you're so very right. But look at us. We're adapting. We're adapting. We're coming together. And what you just said there is really important, reaching out to one another. I have one thing I try to encourage people is to power down off all the social media stuff and engage with one another again. We're seeing this very, very important in schools. I'm working with some schools, and there's a concern about kids kind of really tapping into what's up here rather than relying so much on gadgetry outside of them.
I'm so glad.
So it's interesting.
I'm going to use a word I used earlier, and that was comfort. And as you tell us about the 5 pillars, Mary just had the question up, you're going to tell us about your program. And you talk about the 5 pillars of brain health. Yeah. Comfort us with that, Paul. We want to know. It's comfort, and that is a dear thing.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So, you know, what I do in the Brain Health Center and the Brain Health Lifestyle, which is a kind of a virtual sort of universal thing, is I listen to people, first of all, and I want to get to know each and every person that may engage with me. And they'll tell you where their hole is in their pie, because we all go through life trying to become holy, not in a religious sense so much, but just become whole.
Right.
So there's 5 pillars. You know, this is what Grandma talked to you about. And it's really important to be social, to be engaged, to touch one another emotionally and even physically, holding hands. Particularly, I told you my mom's 98. Holding my mom's hand is very, very important. Okay.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
You know, and eating appropriately. That's very hard for Mary. It's hard for Dr. Nussbaum. I'm sure it's hard for everybody on the call today. We're going to take 2 steps forward and 1 back. But if we're insightful, if we're at least mindful of what we're eating, we can put healthier things into our body. The Mediterranean diet's always a good one to go to.
I
love it. The third major thing is learning and doing and trying. Have the courage to try novel and complex things. Failure is not failure. Failure is a road to success. That's as your brain is developing new brain cells to do that which is complicated for you. We talked about spirituality. I find it to be very, very important. I wrote a book about it. You know, I talk about those things in my field. I talk about those things.
Why? What's the name of the book?
Yeah, I'm interested in health. And that's something that has been found to be very, very powerful for overall health. And certainly, finally, being physically active. And if you just kind of look at the circle with the 5 slices of the brain health pie, you can kind of look in the mirror and say, where am I coming up short? Where am I strong? What can I do today in a baby step fashion to kind of get a little bit stronger? There was a thing here earlier you and I talked about, and Mary put it up there. It's called brain resilience. I want everybody to think about this for a second. When we engage in a brain health lifestyle across our lifespan, our brains begin to look like a jungle. I use that metaphorically. Think about a jungle with all of its trees, and the branches are all so densely packed together, it's hard to get through it because there's no path. But think about, if you will, and I'm not trying to be funny right now, but think about a disease, let's say Alzheimer's. Alzheimer's is a type of weed whacker that comes in and it takes out brain cells. But if your brain is set up like a jungle, how long will it take you with a weed whacker to go into your brain and to take out those brain cells so that it's clinically impactful? What we've learned is individuals who lead a very sophisticated kind of involved lifestyle, even though they have the disease in their brain, because we don't have a cure, we don't have prevention, they're not showing the clinical manifestation that others are who haven't led such a lifestyle. So that's called brain resilience, building a robust brain to help delay onset of clinical manifestation of these diseases. That's what we can do proactively. That's what we're talking about. That's what brain health is all about. And it begins very early in life, and it
Yes.
continues very late in life.
Yes, excellent. I will say that as a gerontologist, the big research on Alzheimer's, of course, is movement is key. And of course, that's your number one thing. Get out there and move. Also, too, in Alzheimer's research, they basically said the bad news is if you're 85 or above, 1 in 2 of you will get Alzheimer's or garden variety dementia. But we're looking at your brain resilience as something that we can do today. And everyone, I hope you're taking pictures with your phone of this list Mary just put up. And eating well, the physical is so important physically to touch each other. I think that's the number one thing of social isolation. And Paul, I told you earlier to get a glass of water, and I'll get mine right here. The gang is used to me doing this. Social isolation translates, unfortunately, into smoking 15 cigarettes every single day of your life. And that is horrible for your health. It literally, for people over 65, reduces your lifespan by 46%. That's pretty darn close to 50, and that's a terrible thing. So in this show, we try to take 15 sips of water instead of our 15 cigarettes a day, and to call someone and to share that with them, someone that you think might be lonely, someone that you think might be isolated. Every one of us has a widow or widower in our lives that we could literally hit redial on our phones, call them up and say, hey, you got 5 minutes? Let's drink some water together and make sure we're both okay. So hydration on this. So here's to you, Paul.
There you go.
Okay. All right. So lastly, in your 5 pillars, Mary, if you'll put that back up again, I want to make it perfectly clear that learning and trying new complex things is so important. Years ago, someone said the intelligent thing, pick a new way to drive home. Yeah. If you drive home from a job, pick a new way. And if you have a half-hour space of time, cushion, I should say, go by the beach. Go somewhere you can see the mountains. Drive in a different area, because many of us are stuck in cars. Now that we're stuck at home, we should figure out a new place to walk. But increasing our spirituality and being physically active, these are simple truths and simple things if we want to.
Right. That's right.
And as you know, it's wanting to.
That's right.
And Paul, is there anything else that if you had people sitting around in their socks listening to you speak, what would you want them to know?
Well, there's a whole sort of area that I've called neurospiritual healing. Okay. And I want everybody to understand that when we practice love, when we practice kindness, when we practice forgiveness is not easy, is it? But you get a big benefit for that one.
Huge benefit.
When you practice compassion.
Yes.
Your brain, those are just words. I want everybody to understand what they mean. But things are really going on neurochemically, neurostructurally in your brain. And that also is about brain health. Okay. It's that emotional fuel that we can practice each day. Doc's already given us a couple of examples. There's nothing stopping us. You're going to use your phone today. Send someone a kind text.
Yes.
Call someone.
Yes.
And particularly the person who you may think doesn't deserve it. Okay. And that's where it's very powerful for you. That is very brain health promoting. I guarantee you, we don't talk about that in medicine. We should.
Yes.
But you gave me the opportunity. So that is something I wanted to share with everyone.
I am so pleased. And I would like you to say the name of your book. I want you to tell us if it's on Amazon, if you'd rather us buy it on your website. How can we get your book?
Yeah, so no, I really don't sell anything. But if you were kind enough to let everybody know about my website, it's brainhealthctr.com, and there's a little tab there that says books if people are interested in. I wrote one that your previous guest, Rick Moody, was kind enough to help, give me an opportunity to talk about, called Save Your Brain. AARP rated that well. And then in 2016, I wrote a book on the convergence of Christianity in this case and the brain, and whether or not there was any interface, if anybody's interested in that. But there's a number of things there on the website to read. Most of them are free.
Awesome. Well, thank you for both of those things, telling us about them and making it so plain that you aren't charging a lot to get the good word out.
Wow.
And I appreciate this interview so much. You have no idea who you're encouraging today. The people who usually show up with me are people who are very spiritual people, very Christian spiritual people. And more than that, they put it to practice. Each of them. I know many of these people personally, and they will put feet on your suggestions, and they will use their hands and arms to love people. And I got to tell you, Paul, I had not heard this from you before about love, kindness, and forgiveness, but that is in the wheelhouse I know is the best for human beings. Right, Mary?
That's right.
Thanks, Mary.
I love it. I couldn't keep up with all of the wisdom that you were sharing.
You're typing fast.
Stuff. So thank you, Paul, for dropping all those wisdom bombs on us. And I think everyone appreciated it, especially if you're watching on the replay. If you have any questions, we always circle back. Seriously, Paul, thank you for doing the work that you do, because
yes,
we all are confused of how to live long and prosper, as Diane referenced the Star Trek earlier. Because that's what we all want to do, right? We want to age well and, leave a legacy that our family will be proud of. And if we just turn into, people who don't try, don't, get out of our comfort zone, we won't be able to do that. So I appreciate that. Yes. So Karen is saying thank you. And yes, Karen is over and above the winner today. She is dropping all the wisdom bombs here. So
yay.
Karen, please put in there if you would like a dainty or a hearty cup, and we'll make sure to get that out to you right away.
Yes.
And we're signing off for the day. Paul's going to stay on for a few minutes. But again, any last words of wisdom about the brain? Any last tip that you want to give to our audience?
You carry with you the single greatest, most magnificent miracle ever designed. Pay attention to it, love it, care for it, and help other people around you, and you'll be okay.
Awesome.
Oh my gosh, I have shivers. That is so awesome. Well, God bless you, Paul. Again, stay on, and everyone, we will see you again soon. Actually, this is our last show for a while. I should actually announce that. Diane is actually going to be unplugging, speaking of Paul, so thank you for sharing those words. She'll be unplugging for a couple months because she's working on a new course that's actually going to help people whose parents are in crisis.
Yes.
That's going to be a resource for them to go to so they know what's going on, what to expect, and maybe she'll actually ask for a little bit of your wisdom, Paul, in regards to that. But I'm very excited for this course to come out. So she's completely unplugging. So we're going to be a little bit quiet, which is unusual for Di Patterson. So this will be
watch the archives in your socks, everybody.
Yes. And as her sister, I can harass her. So anyway, so again, Paul, thank you for being our last show for a little bit. And we'll see everybody probably back in June or the beginning of summer sometime. But again, thank you for being our dedicated watchers. That sounds weird, but we appreciate that. So Paul, hang on, and we'll see you guys this summer. Bye, guys.
Thank you.
And remember to age successfully.
Oh, yes.